Okay, welcome to the Band of Brothers podcast. I'm here today with Chad. Brandon, how you doing, Chad?
Above average. How are you, H?
Oh wow, that's I've never heard anybody say that. I like that. I am close to above average, but not quite there.
Good.
But I'm working on it. So thanks for coming on and being willing to share your story with whoever might be listening. Chad's got a great story, and I'm going to just try and get out of the way and let you just tell what it was like and what happened and what it's like now. So let's just start at the beginning. Like, when was the first time you tried any mind altering substance? How old were you?
Would have been probably about 11 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It 11 years old, probably in the alley back in the neighborhood. Um, Probably that whole summer would have been a little bit of liquor, a little bit of tobacco, all of those fun things.
Where'd you grow up?
Henderson, Nevada, just outside Las Vegas.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Downtown Old Henderson. It was a little town, a lot like small towns in Utah. One high school, two junior highs, and a couple elementaries.
Yeah, for sure. So do you remember the first time you used something?
Yeah, yeah. I think the first time I used anything would have been chewing tobacco, and I puked quite a bit.
Okay.
So it wasn't a good mind altering, but the first alcohol, the first drinking of alcohol, being able to be silly and goofy and run around the alley, and it was energetic for me.
Okay.
It was quite an upper. years later
So,
years later found out that's kind of how my body takes it metabolizes it and hypes me up quite a bit.
oh, does it? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Interesting. So, how did that progress? So you were how old? You were 12, you said?
Yeah, it was either 11 or 12 years old, right there between fifth and sixth grade.
Okay.
For some of you young kids, that was back in the 80s, guys.
Yeah. So how did that progress? I know you were a really good athlete. So were you
Yeah,
um,
so those summers of junior high, that would be, both parents working. Most of our neighborhood, both parents had jobs, and so those of us at that age weren't working yet. So we were kind of the bosses to take care of all the other younger kids in the neighborhood. So we could kind of get away with a few things. So the junior
mhm,
high years were anytime anybody could sneak a beer or a chew or a joint or something like that. We mostly experimented, but later on in life, looking back at it, it was something I look forward to. I kind of was wondering who got what, and did somebody get something from an older brother so that we could go in the alley and be goofy for a few hours. And that happened all through junior high. But when I did get to high school, luckily the high school coaches had an abstinent. You couldn't use and drink, and if you got in
mhm,
trouble doing something like that, you're off the team. And for me, sports and the team sports really mattered a lot. It
mhm.
was something I enjoyed, and so at that time in my life, I definitely chose sports and playing those things through high school. I played football, basketball, and baseball through high school. Um, and that was a time in my life that really did okay with the substances. And then my
Mhm.
senior year, kind of figured I could get away with a few things. So I definitely drank whenever the weekends came that I could. I found
Okay.
a way to drink immediately, right away after the football game. Where's the party? And I was using as much of the alcohol as I could get my hands on anytime that I could.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so but never felt like, I might have a little problem with this, or I don't know, something's going on here, or
Yeah. Yeah. I come from, I'm an adult. I was an adult child of an alcoholic at a young age. Most of my family members have struggled with substance addictions.
Mhm.
And throughout that time, I knew that I could have a problem, but I
Mhm.
definitely was in the place of I'm not like them.
Hmm.
I go to school and I play sports and I can have a job. So I was definitely in a unique arena in my mind, thinking I was different. I was there. At I went to school. I left down there in Henderson to go up to Utah County
Okay.
to try and play baseball up at BYU. Went to back then it was called UVCC
Hmm.
to play some ball, and that's actually when the bug caught me the most. When when I had to make
That is now Utah Valley University.
yes, same area right there, and
Wow. The largest university in Utah, by the way, now.
yeah, they're green and white, right?
Yes, sir. I don't
Yeah,
remember what they're called though, but they're, yeah.
Wolverines,
Yes.
or wolves, something like that.
It's Wolverines. Yeah.
Yeah, Wolverines. That's where the drinking bug got me. That's when I made more of the choices on my own. I was it was right before I turned 18. I graduated high school at 17, and I was on my own, making my own choices, and I made a lot of poor ones. And as soon as I was able to have access to alcohol and liquor and beer regularly with older
Hmm.
friends around, I drank nonstop. It was all
Okay.
day, every day. I don't believe I even got through that first semester with any completions of classes, and that was the end. I spent the
Okay.
next, I guess, 2.5, 3 years couch surfing and in and out of one student housing into another, and spent about 2.5 years of drinking and enrolling into college. I would enroll to college, and I'd go back and forth between my home in Henderson and back up to Utah County and Salt
Okay.
Lake County.
So did you grow up any religion?
I am. I was born and raised in the LDS faith. My
Okay.
dad was his family would say they were Catholic. They're more of the C&E, Christmas and Easter Catholics,
Yeah.
and my mom was LDS. My dad and mom got sealed in the temple when I was 16. When I was in high school, we got sealed as a family.
Okay.
And my dad had got baptized probably around the time I was 12, somewhere in there, 12 or 13.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, yeah. So that's my faith. That's what I believed and still believe today. At 20 years old, I decided to kind of straighten some things out. And
Let's back up a little bit because
yeah,
I think it's interesting. No matter what religion you are, if you're Catholic, if you're, Muslim or whatever, even especially Muslim, I mean, they're very strict code, as far as drinking. If you're Orthodox Muslim, if you're Orthodox LDS, if you're Orthodox Catholic, how are you reconciling your belief system with your behavior?
you know, what had happened about that same time, that 17 years old, I started looking into not necessarily other religions, but other trains of thought, and really thought I was opening my mind, and
Hmm.
really I was just questioning everything that I believed. And so at that point, I really didn't have like this moral fiber in me saying drinking was wrong. It was, I'm drinking, and by the way, I'm thinking about where I stand in my morality. There
Gotcha.
wasn't a whole lot of that for those few years. I'm sure it was in there, but it's not something I go back to and go, huh, did I do that? There wasn't that much of a, I think, maybe in our faith we call it a testimony. There
Hmm.
wasn't that much of a testimony prior to 20 years old.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was more of a, oh, you go to church because you go to church,
Hmm.
and that's what you do. And I don't know that I had a real testimony and understanding in that belief system at the time.
Okay. So I interrupt you. 20, so you started what then?
Yeah, at 20, I was sitting in a room I was renting in an attic in Sugar House in Salt Lake City, and I don't remember what I had done for the couple weeks prior to that. Um, but I had remembered I was at home at Christmas time in Henderson, Nevada, and this was January 2nd, and I was waking up in Salt Lake. So I had somehow signed a lease and gotten a job and was there, and kind of woke up after a nap and a sandwich.
Mhm.
And it was a Sunday, and I looked around and saw people going to church. And so this would have been probably January of 94, I think. And
Okay.
people were going to church, and I thought, I think there's an LDS youth ward or student ward up this way. I should go that way. And I just went to church. And
Where'd you go?
huh?
Where did you go? Do you remember?
I went up to the University of Utah, and up by
Oh,
the
okay.
basketball arena, they have, like, at that time there was three chapels in the same parking lot,
Yeah.
and I walked into one. It happened to be starting. Obviously, it was the 1st of January, so it was a testimony meeting, and that's as close as us Mormons get to breaking plates and playing a guitar. So the spirit
Hmm.
was pretty strong, and afterwards, I asked the bishop, and I kind of said, I should talk to you. And he talked to me for a bit, and I was like, I need to go on a mission. I need to go on a mission. And he slowed me down a bit and said, let's talk next week. And I in that week met my first wife, and
Okay.
she was working at the mall. I was at Crossroads Mall working at
Hmm.
the old Health Rider stores, if you remember those Health Rider stores
Yeah.
in the mall. And I did. It was as close as I've ever come to a bolt of lightning, of a
Mhm.
change. Because when I woke up that morning and went to church, the the obsession and compulsion, I didn't think of drinking or chewing or using drugs or women or any of that stuff anymore. I was like on a whole new path. And
Yeah.
there wasn't a prayer with it, a traditional kneel down and pray and ask. It just, I woke up, and it was a sunny January day in Salt Lake, and I started walking, and it
Okay.
worked out for me. Um, Met with the bishop, and kind of went through the repentance process over the next 7 or 8 months, and got endowed and married in the temple that year to my first wife.
Okay.
And
So you
the
didn't go on a mission.
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't.
So how did your drinking before all this, how did it affect your athletics?
I was done as soon as I started drinking. I had gone to a few fall ball practices, and told myself that, yeah, that's not really my path. I'm small. I'm too little. I'm never going to get any bigger. All this is fun, or I'm in school. It got me here. Just a lot of self doubt, and
Hmm.
I never overcame any of those things. The All I wanted to do was sit around and drink.
Okay. So now you're 21, 20,
Yep.
and married
Yep.
and just working. Or did you go back to school or what did you
I
do? What was
didn't. I never finished school. I At 21 years old got married and ended up working for Beneficial Life, the LDS Church Life Insurance Company in Salt Lake, and went there and DMBA and had some decent jobs. My wife and I decided to have kids right away and do everything we could for her to stay at home, and we did that. 4 kids, 15 years of marriage. Did check the boxes, here and there, and coached the kids in baseball and football and basketball and even soccer at one point, and
Mhm.
held callings in church, and went to the temple with the wife. And at 35 years old, so about 14 years, her and I got divorced, and
Mhm.
we got divorced, and it took me a few months of navigating. I didn't really feel comfortable when we got divorced. The house we were living in, the ward we were in, both of us moved out of. So she
Okay.
moved to a different area, I moved to a different area. and I didn't go back to church.
So let's back up to these 15
Yeah.
years of marriage. Were you drinking at all?
No.
So you had 15 years. Were you in any type of recovery or were you just,
Nope.
no,
Nope.
okay.
Nope. It wasn't there. There were actually two times in that 15 years where we were out socially for something fun, and I looked over at the wife for permission to have a drink, you know, and and so it wasn't something hidden in the marriage. It was, I'm gonna have a drink,
Okay.
and 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 it didn't really affect me. It was fun. It was silly. It was something that I did, and that was it. The last 6 months of that marriage, I introduced drinking to my wife, and
Okay.
to see if that would be something that she would want to do. And it wasn't something for our marriage. And I think at the time I was thinking it to be something to kind of save the marriage. I was
Okay.
kind of seeking for anything, and that just really didn't obviously save the marriage, but it wasn't something. Looking back now at that, that was, something I was trying to use to cope. It was
Right.
obviously creeping itself in. Um, but after we got divorced and separated to two different homes, about 90 days, 4 months after that, I had been going with the guys at work to happy hour. I've been going with the guys to work for karaoke night to the bar,
Mm-hmm.
free pool night at the bar, when I didn't have my kids. So I'd go to ball practice, take the kids home at 8, and I'm like, now what do I do? Sit around for hours. And so I'd go be designated driver. Great idea. And as I do that, um, the ex-wife started talking about moving the kids from the Salt Lake area down south to St. George,
Mm-hmm.
and it took a toll on me emotionally because wasn't in a financial situation where I could make the move, and I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't have any coping skills or mechanisms to really help me manage that. I definitely didn't have healthy friends because I had already alienated any support I would have had at church because I stopped going to church. Um,
Gotcha.
I was insecure about going to church, not having kids with me, being a 35-year-old man, and not going to singles wards or anything like that. And so I just checked that off my list that that's not something I can do or that I wanted to do. But about 4 months after the divorce, I was at the bar and I said, I'm going to have a drink. I'll show them. And
Mm-hmm.
that drink I remember. That's the drink in my story that I remember.
What did it do?
It made me forget about absolutely everything that was going on. And all I cared about in that moment was shoot and pull and being dumb and cussing and letting loose. And it absolutely worked for that moment. And from then on, I drank every night. Every night I drank, whether I took the kids home. Now, for the first, 3 to 6 months, I can't remember exactly, but 3 to 6 months, the drinking really was more about when I didn't have the kids.
Mm-hmm.
So if I didn't have the kids, I wasn't doing anything, didn't have alcohol at the house. I just went to the bar and drank whenever the kids weren't there. And it didn't take very long till I needed to have a drink in the morning. And then I'd make sure I had a drink in the afternoon and a bottle hidden in my house when the kids were there and things like that. And and that was about the same time the kids moved to St. George. So then they were about 300 miles away from me. So,
And what did that do to you? Like, how was that? How did that affect your drinking or your social life, or what'd you do?
um, I drank myself out of a house. I drank myself out of quite a few jobs, and eventually was just a backpack full of clothes with a couple containers of um, you know valuables at my sister's house. It was about 18 months of just drinking.
Hmm.
And I would have a job here and work at a restaurant for a couple weeks, make some tip money, and lose that job for drinking or not showing up. And luckily, I had a sister that was codependent enough to ask me if I wanted to get out of there and get to. She lived in St. George, and
Hmm.
so she said, "If you can get your shit together, you can come down here and get a job and see if a fresh start will help." And so
What are
she,
you experiencing emotionally over this time frame? Like, what's your life like? So
uh,
you're. I mean, I know when you didn't drink, if you were like me, you're probably white knuckling quite a bit,
yeah,
emotionally white knuckling quite a bit. But once now you're divorced and now you decided I'm going this direction, and now you had been active in a religion, and now you had to make that decision as well. And I'm not trying to overplay that, but it's part of people's story. It was part of my story as a Catholic.
yeah.
So like what's your life like? Like what does your day look like?
My day was awful. It was get up to the shakes and the pukes and the dry heaves and get some liquor in me, and that was about it. Emotionally, it was awful. If I was sober, I was a wreck until I got enough drinks into me. I had shame and guilt. I was an awful parent. I was a bad dad, and every bad thing that I could imagine I might have ever done in my life was just right here in the forefront of my head.
Hmm.
And I couldn't rectify that. I couldn't feel it. I didn't want to feel it. It was miserable. That before the drink was miserable. And it
Hmm.
pushed me to the next drink as fast as I could get it. In any way possible, any means possible. It didn't matter how to get that drink. I had let the kids down. They were 300 miles away. They don't have a dad. You know, all of those things were right there
Right.
in the front.
So now you're down in St. George.
Yep.
And how old are you? What year is it?
Um, that would have been in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, 2014, spring of 14. And I got down here to St. George, and my sister gave me a couch to sleep on because she had all the space as a single mom with four kids. Yeah,
Hmm.
I think it was a love seat. And so I wrecked that house as fast as I could for about 60 days, and a lot of drinking. Luckily, I did put together a job. I put together enough manageability of the drinking that I could work consistently enough to get a place to live.
Hmm.
And that place, um, I I met a woman, and we started dating, and she had a place for me to stay, and
Okay.
so that's that's where I ended up, any means necessary. And
Hmm.
so she happened to be my employer as well, and I was able to drink all day, every day, um, while living with her and her kids for a couple years.
What were
And
you doing? What was your occupation?
working with disabled, handicapped adults.
Okay.
Yep. So I managed
You fit right in.
families. Yeah, exactly. I managed families and their needs, and kind of logistics of
Mhm.
things. And it was a great job because I could work from home, which means
Okay.
I could drink from home. And that's when the volume of alcohol increased quite a bit. Went from a few pints and a few beers a day up to a gallon of vodka every day.
Okay.
And that's where the physical part of the addiction went to the next level, to
Hmm.
the worst level. That was if I wasn't drinking about every hour and a half or so, I was shaking and seeing things. So I'd see the shadow people in cars and hear the voices off to the side and things like that. So
What
um,
emotion do you think you were medicating the most? What drove you? Fear,
the
resentment,
sadness,
sadness? Okay.
it was the sadness. Yeah. I think at the beginning, when I first got divorced, it was the fear. I think the biggest thing was the fear of how this is going to look, what it's going to look like, how am I going to accomplish these things and still be a dad, and the fear was the thing at the beginning. Now it's
Okay.
just pure sadness of the wreckage that I've caused,
Okay.
the wreckage of my life, and at that point, it really was physical. I had detached from the kids, and they had detached from me for probably a good 18 months at that point.
Okay.
Then the gal that I was with, we did get married in those 2 years. And she kicked me out. She said, enough's enough, get out, get divorced, we're done, you're out of here. And that would have been in April of 2015. And
Okay.
April 2015, my sister came back around to give me one more shot at staying there. And my ex and my sister, my second ex and my sister, got me into an apartment. Paid for 30 days. I had a job. They paid for my first month and set it all up. And on day 34, I was evicted. So at that point, I grabbed a
For
backpack.
what?
Huh?
For what?
Not paying anything else ever.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I it was a lease agreement, but I used it as a motel room.
Okay.
And at that point, I had a little bit of money and had some people would let me stay at a hotel here and there, and but I had a backpack full of clothes. That was it. That's what I was down to. And that was June of 15, June of
Okay.
2015, and I hop between couches. There's a nice little bridge over at Sunbrook Golf Course in the summertime that has water that runs through it. So it's kind of
Wow.
like having air conditioning.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd sleep there sometimes as well. Patch together some dollars for some liquor and whatever else I could do to stay clean and sober. Well, on the 4th of July of 2015, I'd asked my sister just a day or so before then if I could stay with her. She said, the only way you're staying with me is if you have a plan to get some help.
Okay.
And I didn't know what that was. At this point, I hadn't talked to my kids in months. No one in my family but my sister would return any phone calls. I couldn't go very long without drinking. I'd been in the hospital many, many, many times for DTs on the side of the road, on the curb, hallucinating, going to the B-Med,
Mm-hmm.
and those things had happened throughout. And really, I didn't feel much of anything. Um, Glimpses of my past, and it felt like it was a whole different person. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I talked to my sister. She said, if you put a good healthy plan together, well, I'll help you, but it'll be temporary.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't the long game. It's only temporary till you get into treatment. So at that point, I started using Google searches and looking up treatment centers. I was here in St. George, and by doing that, somehow I came across a phone number, and I hit the phone number, and a guy, Dave Pinniger, up at the ranch up in Idaho Falls, was the one that answered the phone, and he gave me some experience, strength, and hope. I told him what was going on. I told him my story. He took the time to listen to me. Um, he told me in a good way how shitty my situation was and how shitty of a guy I was. So if you know Pinnaker, you know exactly how he might have said that to me.
Yeah.
And by doing so, I felt his honesty, but I felt his love, and he understood. And there was enough hope right there that I knew I wanted to get better. And it was the first time I had felt any hope that I could have changed anything in a very,
Right.
very long time. At that point, with talking with him, he told me I needed to get to a hospital and get cleared. And if I made it to Idaho, that there were ways for me to get into treatment and that he could help out. And that's all I remembered. And then I remember taking a screenshot of his phone number and saving it as my main screen on my phone. So every time it popped up, it said his name and had the phone number on it every time I looked at my phone. And
Okay.
and it was just a way to remind me that that's what the plan was, and also to tell my sister so I'd have a place to sleep and eat that night. And that was the plan. And I went and told my sister that that was on the morning of the 5th of July. And
Okay.
and she said, okay, well, you can stay here, you're going to go to the hospital tomorrow. And I said, yep, go in the hospital tomorrow to get checked out. And he said that they'll give me some meds. I didn't know what I was doing. I just was going the most minimal steps as I could
Hmm.
to get there. It's all I had the capacity for at the time. And 6 days later, I finally got out of her house, and it was her giving me a little bottle of vodka because she knew I'd be shaking, and she said, "Start walking." And so I walked from Ivins, Utah, to make it to St. George. And I made it past two different liquor stores on the walk. Ended up getting arrested that night uh, for public intox. Went to the jail. Um, the jail let me out on OR, my own recognizance, and I really just at that point, from leaving my sister's house, even though it was a drunken walk and it
Hmm.
was a journey, um, I didn't actually get away from the plan. I
Okay.
it's just that was the capacity I had for the walk was how it was going. And I get to released from the jail the next morning, and I call my buddy Tony, and luckily he did answer. And I think he only answered because I was calling from the gas station and not from my cell phone. And I just
Gotcha.
told him I need a ride. I just need a ride to the hospital. And he gave me the good line, I'll give you a ride to the hospital, and that's all I'm going to do. And so he gave me a ride to the hospital. Right about the time I'm in the hospital, they're asking what I'm doing there. And I didn't know what to say. I'm like, I'm going to treatment. And all of a sudden, the shakes started happening because the
Mm.
hospital's like, we can't do anything for you. What are you even here for? And then that's when the tremors and the DTs and everything started. And I was thrashing around quite a bit. They put me under for a while. They woke me up and said, you better call a loved one, tell them what's going on.
Hmm.
Said okay. And so they like induced coma, put me out, whatever you want to call that, for 3 nights. So
Wow.
yeah, so 3 nights I was just in the hospital, and they said that it was pretty bad. My all my vitals were dumb, like every 40-year-old alcoholic's vitals would be drinking that much. And they said, okay, well, we're going to release you. What's your plan? And I looked at my phone, and I said, this is where I'm supposed to go. And they said, well, you need to figure out a plan. Luckily, I had a social worker that was persistent enough at the hospital to really like come back and say, okay, what'd you do next? What do we do next? What do we do
Hmm.
next? And my little brother paid for a Greyhound to go from St. George to Idaho Falls. My sister was willing to pick me up, and Dave, the ranch was willing to accept me in Idaho Falls, and so um, they said, okay, we're gonna release you here in a couple hours. Let's do the final blood work, and they ran my blood work and said we can't actually release you today because your blood alcohol level is still over a 0.05. So
After 3 days,
yeah, so I might have been drinking a little bit.
perhaps.
Yeah, it might have been a problem drinker. So at that point, my sister did that. They got me on a bus, and
So what time of year is this?
July. That would have been July 14th of 2015. So it was about 109 degrees outside.
Okay.
That's why the little viaduct with water running through it was nice at the bridge. It was a little cooler under there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I get on the shuttle and I have a bag full of clothes and I don't know where I'm going. I've never done treatment before. I've only heard the little things that you see on TV, about treatment, and nobody had talked to me. My sister said, "Good luck, good riddance." I'm sure she was glad to have me gone. And as I'm driving up there, I suddenly got scared in the Greyhound, and I was scared of two things. One thing I was scared of was that all of the struggle I went through, which those of us on here that are addicts and alcoholics know that one day of walking just to get to the hospital
Mm-hmm.
was a journey. It was a very long and hard journey. And I thought on that Greyhound bus, two things I was scared of. One was I'd be going through all of this, I'd go up to treatment and do everything they asked me to do, and it wouldn't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a real fear, and it consumed me for a while on that trip. And my second fear was is I'd get up to Idaho Falls and I'd do everything that they asked me to do, and then who the hell am I? I wouldn't know who I was.
Mm-hmm.
They'd make me into something I didn't want to be, and those were both real fears. They were
How
scary.
long was it from when you started drinking to when you got up to Idaho Falls? How many years?
Just under 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yep, yep. So in those five
You know,
years,
they talk about the progression of the disease, and that even though we stop, that physically it progresses with us. And if we, if I picked up now, it would be as if I'd been drinking the last X amount of years that I've been sober. You really had 15 years of that, and then when you picked up, you picked up and started running quick.
yep,
I don't understand how that works. A lot of people with letters after their names have told me that's true, so I
yeah,
believe them. But I'm listening to your story, and that seems like that's what happened to you.
yeah. Yeah, and when I go back to that first drink in the bar, like I remember absolutely everything about the drink,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember thinking, oh, here it is. This is the solution.
Mm-hmm.
That this fixes it. What's going on? And
Right.
that's super scary to this day for me. And yeah, I can't imagine how my life would have been if I kept drinking.
Yeah. So you're up in Idaho Falls now,
Yep.
and what's going on there?
Well, right before Idaho Falls, there was it was kind of funny. I don't know if you've ever stopped at gas stations in Utah. They have beer coolers out in the back,
Yeah.
and in the back of the store, you can kind of avoid them. But in Idaho, um, the gas station in Malad we stopped at, right behind the cash register is every beautiful bottle of liquor.
Yeah. Yeah.
so I get up to Idaho Falls, and at that point, Pinnaker had the ranch had a sober house there that they had just opened, and so I got into the sober living. At that point, I had the Librium and all the meds from the hospital I had been taking, but that was when I got up there, and they put me in the house, and I went to treatment. And I had a therapist and I had a recovery coach, and they suggested things like go to a meeting, you know,
Mm-hmm.
get a job, and I did those things. I think I was super super grateful today because I was done. Like
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't anywhere for me to go. It was back to the bridge, and so on that hard day, whenever I had a hard day of like, the F it's, I don't want to do this anymore in
Mm-hmm.
treatment. This is some stupid, dumb rule. I'm 41 years old. Why are you telling me to do this or that?
Right.
Um, the fact that I didn't want to go back to where I was kept me from drinking and kept me from leaving treatment.
Yeah.
Those were the things that kept me there. It wasn't necessarily the gain of having my kids back, because that wasn't a reason to stop me from drinking. It
Right.
was going to
Right.
be a reason to keep me from drinking, but I didn't want that pain anymore. When I got enough clarity from detoxing and a little bit of therapy and a little bit of AA under my belt, I
Hmm.
realized drinking's going to give me that pain again.
Yeah.
And that pain I didn't want.
But it's kind of a conflict because drinking took care of the pain for
Yep.
many years, and was the solution. And then as it flips around and it's the other side of the coin,
Yeah.
our mind still tends to go back to, yeah, but I remember when it, like, I remember when I got I remember when it worked. And,
Yeah.
you must have been thinking in Malad in that 7-Eleven or whatever, like, well, just, I'm going to treatment. I might as well tie one last one on. I might,
Yep.
I'm okay. I've got some Librium. I'll be okay. They'll never know. Like, you must have had that
Oh
insanity
yeah.
then.
It was nonstop.
Yeah.
I still to this day don't know how I got out of that gas station without drinking,
Yeah.
because it was just right there. I had enough money in my pocket. There were even the little bottles. I could have
Yeah.
had 3 or 4 of them in my pocket in the
Like the little airline
Greyhound.
bottles.
Oh
Little,
yeah, they had little ones. They were pretty. They were everywhere. You know how pretty those things look
yeah.
when you need a drink.
Well,
And
you obviously had some angels around you.
yeah, yeah. It it was a neat experience to get there. And when I get to the ranch up there, I had a lot of the normal experiences. When I tell my story, I say my recovery is definitely line upon line, precept upon precept. I
Hmm.
I, I have not been struck by lightning. Um, Today I'll wake up and I'll hear something or think of something that I've been doing that was told to me 8 or 9 years ago, and I'll be
Hmm.
like, "Oh, that was so great! Look at what an impact it had on my life." But it
Yeah.
didn't have an impact 8 or 9 years ago. It was
Yeah.
little by little by little by little by continuing to practice all these things that were suggested to me.
So when, if I can back up again, like when did you decide I've had it? Why did you decide I've had it?
So
What brought you to that
yeah,
that decision?
so that June and July, before I decided to go to Idaho and make those phone calls, I couldn't even get well drinking alcohol. I
Okay.
couldn't get well drinking alcohol. And so other substances came in to the picture there for probably about 2 or 3 weeks, just to get me not sick. And I couldn't drink enough. It didn't matter how fast I drank, and other substances came. And one of my friends suggested heroin.
Okay.
And so they were getting ready to shoot up and things like that. And they're like, this will get you well. And luckily for me, there was a moment that happened that the needle had dropped, and he's like, "Oh, I'll take care of this, and we'll get you ready in a minute." And it was just a little bit of moment of clarity, and I'm like, "What in the hell am I doing?"
Hmm.
And so I did say no. I just said no.
Hmm.
For that moment, sat in the corner and kept drinking and doing other stuff. And that was July 4th. That was the
Hmm.
day. And it just gave me enough clarity to look and go, dude, I'm living under a bridge. I'm in a tent on the 4th of July. I can't even go to my sister's house to let anyone live on her couch except me. And that clarity of going, what in the hell am I really doing?
Hmm.
Um, and there was a lot of pity party, you're a piece of crap, you're no good.
Hmm.
But it was enough to drive me, because I do have value.
Yeah, I think too, we've all seen people hit temporal bottoms, people lose homes and jobs and families and freedom and a lot of things. But, in my experience in my life and watching other people, it's when people hit those spiritual bottoms,
Yeah.
when they lose hope. As sad as that sounds, when drugs and alcohol no longer provide hope, because that was always my hope was, okay, when I'm done with whatever it was, work, or when I get through this situation, as long as I had something, as long as I knew I had something at home, whatever it was, weed, booze, pills, as long as I knew I had the solution, I could get through that next whatever that thing was. And even sometimes driving to get dope,
Yeah.
I was so relieved and hopeful. You almost get high. I don't know if
Yeah.
anybody's ever experienced that, but you almost, it's like, oh man, cool. All right, I'm okay for however long I know
I,
that
I
bag
can
or
make
that
it
bottle.
45 minutes.
Yeah, whatever it might be. And so, but when that no longer provides that hope, I think those are when bottoms are hit a lot of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, I think that's what that did in the tent that night is I was hopeless and damn near helpless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then within 10, 12 hours having a conversation with Dave gave me hope
Mm-hmm.
again. And that was what drove me to Idaho was okay, there's some hope because I
Mm-hmm.
knew for sure there was none where I was at.
Yeah. So, what was your biggest aha moment in treatment? Did something really resonate where it's like, okay, I can do this, or okay, something clicked, you
Yeah,
know?
somewhere around and I always get asked this and I never know. Somewhere around 40 to 60 days I was in there. And again, a lot of it was I have clean water, I have a shirt on my back, people are nice to me, I have food. This is a better life than I had. All I have to do is not use drugs and
Mm-hmm.
alcohol. I can do that. That's how it was for a little bit. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have any more feeling that something great's going to happen and I'm never going to drink ever again. But
Mm-hmm.
around 40 to 60 days sober, my recovery coach asked, like, okay, little checklist, right? When's the last time you thought about drinking or, that one of those kinds of situations. And when he asked that, I went, damn, I haven't really thought about drinking in a couple weeks. And, and we kneeled down to pray and asked for that to continue in a way of the obsession and compulsion being relieved. And very unorthodox, it was in a different order, but that's the time we took. And by doing that, I didn't feel the hand of God come on my shoulder,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I felt accomplished. I
Mm-hmm.
That was the first look at myself and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm not obsessed with this." That's right. 2 months ago, I was 100% drinking all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
I just did this thing for 48 days. And I'm not caring whether I go home to drink. I'm going home to
Right.
the sober house to play ping pong. I'm
Right.
going to work to sweep up at the paper mill, you know. Um, Also, when I moved into the house, there was a guy, good friend of mine, Mike, that started within the same week as I did. And he's just a couple years older than me. And we connected quickly,
Mm-hmm.
really good friends. And just before this call, I was on the phone with him again, telling him I was going to be talking with you. And Mike and I hit it off, and it was great to have somebody else in there with
Mm-hmm.
me that I could just talk to
Mm-hmm.
and that understood what I was going through. And by he and I talking those first couple months, it was about that same time where I realized that's how AA works.
Right.
And that fellowship, that we call it the brotherhood here, that brotherhood that I got with Mike, I realized I can actually have that everywhere, no
Mm-hmm.
matter where I go, where I live. Um, if I stick to AA, I can have a fellowship that understands me.
Yeah, and there's really two AAs comprised of kind of two programs or two facets. There's the book and the steps, and then there's the meetings and the fellowship.
Yeah,
And both are critical, and I think even more so is the fellowship, a sense of belonging, a sense of
yeah,
community, brotherhood, whatever you want to call it. That there's this common goal, this common malady, and we're fighting for our lives. And when you're fighting for your life with somebody, it's a warlike situation almost. It's
Yeah.
almost military, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you get that level of closeness, when you're that close to
Yeah.
death with somebody, so to speak.
I don't know how many times I've been at a meeting and I've shared something and someone come up to me and need to talk about something.
Hmm.
And I don't know them per se,
Hmm.
but you can feel the spirit in the conversation.
Right,
You know that that's what this is for. That's
right.
what this is about. And how many times, I've been able to call on any of my brothers and
Hmm.
and say, this is the shit I'm going through.
Right.
My wife and I right now, she knows that if I got to talk about something, there's a strong likelihood I've already talked to my sponsor about it before I've talked to her. It's very likely that I've already talked to my therapist
Yeah,
before I'm bringing it to her,
yeah,
and that's okay in our marriage. That's understood because that's somebody that can understand me
right.
and help me through that so I have the proper presentation to my family.
So how did you transition then? How long were you in? I'm assuming you went to like a day treatment PHP and
Yeah.
then you went to an IOP.
Yep.
How long were
Six
you up in Idaho Falls?
6 months.
Wow,
So,
awesome.
yep, 6 months I was in Idaho Falls. Made my way back to southern Utah. But for 6 months I was in treatment. I worked 25, 30 hours at the paper factory there, sweeping and mopping and stacking paper and then made my way down south here.
So
So
how did
I
you
had my
transition? What did
41st.
you do?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I had my 41st birthday in treatment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you transition back down to St. George? What resources did you plug into? And I think this is awesome because you might be the first podcast I've done with the Band of Brothers podcast that is a non-residential guy.
Mm.
And I believe there's so many ways to get sober, and there's so many levels of care that you can get sober in, and a lot of times, and you fit that perfect. You're like, what's your first treatment? Unless you were pretty chronic, you could have probably done res. Like
Oh yeah.
you probably
Yeah.
needed that.
I did, I'm
Um,
sure.
but there's a lot of ways of doing this. There's a lot of ways of getting sober, and whether it's day treatment or IOP or whatever it might be. Well, we won't get into that. But yeah, I think this is really interesting to me, and I love it because I think there's no cookie cutter, right?
No, no, there's not. And I did 6 months of treatment up there. And what I did is while I was in treatment, I went to AA. I went all the time. I wanted to get comfortable with it. As I was hearing and understanding what was going on, doing the steps in treatment, I got a temporary sponsor up in
Hmm.
Idaho.
Hmm.
And the guy I was with
So
up
you
in
were
Idaho,
doing the steps in treatment, though.
yeah, I was learning about him with the recovery coach in
Okay.
treatment.
Okay.
And
I think I
the
wrote that silly manual Pinniger used to use, actually.
oh, I still have it.
Are you, are,
You want me to
are you
show it to you?
serious?
It's right here.
Dude, that's been a long time ago. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad
Yeah.
somebody read it.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't write in it, but I read it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. Stage 1, 2, and 3, and the family one. I'll have to show it to
Yeah.
you sometime, Age.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I did get a temporary sponsor up there, and he got an old farm boy, and went to a meeting on a Sunday afternoon of a bunch of old drunks.
Hmm.
Um, and he said, you're probably going to move back down there. Let's do this. And he just hit me with 1, 2, and 3.
Hmm.
He's like, 1, 2, 3. Think you're good? All right, 1, 2, 3. And he's like, if you stay here and that's what you decide after treatment, we'll work on 4 and the rest of them, but let's just do 1, 2, 3. And all
Mm-hmm.
we did was just see where 1, 2, and 3 intertwines,
Mm-hmm.
throughout life. And I met with him every Sunday after the meeting or before sometimes. And I liked it. I enjoyed the fellowship. I was actually like chomping at the bit to do, the rest of the steps and
Mm-hmm.
get that healing done. And obviously I did the assignments and stuff through treatment for the
Mm-hmm.
12 steps.
So
That was
how did you plan your transition? Like what did you set in place before you're like, okay, I'm good to go?
Yeah. So Thanksgiving and Christmas came up at month 5 and 6 for me. And so I did a safety plan with the group so that I could leave outpatient there and come back to Utah and have a break with the family for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And part of
Mm-hmm.
that safety plan was going to meetings because I didn't have work. So I went to 2 or 3 meetings each day and got an idea of where they were. There is an Alano club here in St. George that has quite a few meetings. Even back then, there was at least 2, 3 meetings a day at the
Heck,
club.
the Alano Club has a stinking pool down there.
Yeah, yeah, it has a pool, it has a
If you don't
pond
want to
up
get
there.
sober, just go swim there if you're
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. It'll close again in September.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a that's what I did. I started checking out AA meetings and
Where did you move to?
so initially I
It's like
moved.
the physical plant. Did you move back into sober living or did you move in?
Nope.
Okay, well,
After 6 months, I moved into the home with my current wife, with my second wife.
okay.
Um, and I moved into home with her and my 2 stepdaughters.
Okay.
And my plan was to hit AA. Now, my therapist, I'd always done marketing types of jobs and sales types of jobs. And my therapist gave a suggestion to look outside of that for a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Right.
Not jump right back into a high intensity job like that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
took that suggestion, and there happened to be some factory jobs in the Salt Lake City area. Um, we landed at Clearfield, so we rented a place in Layton, Clearfield area, and I
Okay.
worked at a factory, worked at a restaurant, did a
Okay.
couple different jobs. And I needed to like finish paying off probation and parole from a
Mhm.
DUI. I had to pay fines to get my driver's license back, things like that.
I think
Um,
this is critical what you're saying because it's what I experienced is I was in the sales world as well and I knew I couldn't go back to
yeah,
that. I knew I couldn't, and it wasn't any one industry. I just knew I couldn't. And I was making okay money.
yeah,
Um, I, well, I wasn't the last 6 months, but anyway, I knew
right,
I could go. I knew that I could turn the faucet back on,
yep,
and man, I delivered Domino's and Chinese food my first year. It was the best thing I ever did for my recovery. It was you give
same,
me a pizza, I give it to another person, they give me money, I give you money and keep the difference. And you give me Chinese food and I could do it when I wanted. I could hit my 10 a.m. meeting. And so if you're out there and you like, oh, I got to get right back into my career. Now, I'm not saying you don't go back to your career. You might have a great job and that might be the right thing for you. Be prayerful about that. But if it's an industry where there's a lot of using, and if you're going back to a company with a lot of people you used with, whether it's construction or sales or, that's all of our sales meetings were in bars.
yeah,
Like that's where we conducted business. And
yep,
so, if you're out there listening, like I just be careful, talk to your sponsor, talk to your therapist, talk to your wife. Like, what's the decision should always be, even now, but for sure the first year is what's the next best thing for my sobriety. And it
yeah,
might look good, like, oh, I can go make 10 grand a month doing this, and I can get out of debt and I can pay my court fines, and my wife will like me a little more. But is that really the best decision for your
yeah,
recovery? You
yeah.
know?
I was super grateful for it because it was after after I got out of treatment, it was about 14 months of punching a clock at a warehouse, driving a forklift around. It was cold, it was hot, all the things, working at a restaurant to pay off the rest of the fines. And for me, there was some humility in it, but there was a ton of peace of mind. It
Mhm.
really was like I knew when I was going to work, I knew when I was coming home from work, I knew when my meetings were. It was a great time.
Mhm.
And then it comes to my second years of sobriety. So May of 16, that's the next kind of like jumping off point. I was nearing 2 years of clean and sober, and my kids were still in St. George, and I thought I'd like to get back to St. George, clean and sober, and have something good going on. At that point, I thought maybe I could use this sales and marketing that I've always done. Maybe there's something in recovery I can do.
Mhm.
Let me see if this is a way I can help others, because Pinniger answered that phone call, and I remember that phone call, and I thought I'd be good at giving people experience, strength, and hope. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I asked around of um, what type of position that is, and they said, "Oh, it's an admissions guy." And I said, "Okay, cool, I can do that." So there was Renaissance Ranch down here in St. George, and I called Taz Decker, and he was the owner down here, and I said, "Hey, Taz, I'd like to see about coming to work for you. I'm moving down in a couple weeks." And he's like, "Yeah, come on down, stop in and see me when you come in." And so I moved down here. I started working at Cracker Barrel because I had to make sure I had a job. So I was waiting tables at Cracker Barrel, and I put on my good pink polo and some khakis, and walked into the ranch down here, and told old Mike Keenan and Taz Decker, I said, "Hey, you guys, I'm going to be your new admissions and marketing guy." See, that's the hard close, right?
Yeah.
And they said no for about 2 weeks, but I ended up doing the alumni meeting for the ranch here for a couple weeks in a row. Was
Mhm.
able to increase some activity, and they brought me on, and that's what started my career in treatment. Was working for the ranch about a little over 7 years ago now,
Awesome.
and again, making that transition was hard, but I did the exact same thing when I moved to St. George as when I left treatment. I
Mhm.
made sure I connected with AA right away. I doubled up on the frequency of how many meetings I was doing.
Mhm.
Went to different meetings at different locations to find which ones I like, um, and and that's what seems to work.
Yeah, and sometimes in early recovery, you have to just do the opposite of what you were doing, the
Yeah.
opposite of what you. Ironically, my son and I watched the Seinfeld episode where George was just fed up with life and decided to do the opposite. So he walks up to a woman in the restaurants. I'm George Costanza. I'm unemployed. I live in my parents' basement. I'd like to take you out. She goes, "Oh, hey," and gives him his number. Gets a job with the Yankees because he just does the opposite of
Opposite.
what. Yeah,
Yeah.
and sometimes we have to do that,
Yeah.
for a minute,
Yeah.
But so
Yeah.
what's it like now, dude? Like I know you're recently married,
Yep.
and
I got married this year.
so you got divorced in recovery.
I did.
How was that compared to being divorced, not in recovery?
Ooh, so much easier.
Okay.
In
I'm not I'm
recovery.
not I'm not promoting people getting divorced in
No,
recovery.
no. Well, okay, well, maybe I'll reframe it. Going through life stuff that happens, the big life stuff that happens
Mhm.
is for me a lot easier in recovery. Actually, it's pretty seamless because I have that support group
Mhm.
around me. I have a therapist to talk to. I have a sponsor to talk to. I have sponsees to work with. I have men and brothers that are in a group text at any moment to do anything to help me out.
Mhm.
And talking through it before the divorce happens having the background with a therapist so he knows what I'm all about is the key.
Mm-hmm.
So right now my recovery looks like I have the blueprint to be successful around me at whatever comes my way,
Yeah. I
and
think it's
divorce just
important you
happens
share
to be
that.
one of them.
I think it's important that you shared me. I remember I didn't really know you well. I know they were trying to get the alumni meeting going at the new Renaissance down there about a year ago, and you and Chad showed up. And then I don't know, like 4 or 5 months ago, I was at the Alano Club, and you were sharing in the front that you weren't working anymore. And I think we talked after, like, we got to call this dude.
Yeah.
And you just like you never know what happens,
Yeah.
with people. And but if you just don't talk, nothing happens. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I think that's been key for me all along, is not keeping things bottled up, making sure I have enough people around me that I can have places to share,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
So you married a woman you knew from high school. Is that not
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah. Yeah. We were high school sweethearts. So did the homecoming and proms, and all through high school we dated, and um, we reconnected this last year.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Got married and it's been good.
So what do you do every day? What are your day? What do you do every day to stay sober? What's your deal? What are your dailies, if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. The last 2 years, fitness and food, like diet food, has really added to my recovery program, believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
I I wake up most mornings and I do my prayers and my meditations, which for me is just a look outside. Good weather, it's a stand out on the porch for a minute. It's at the kitchen table while the house is quiet. It's in the front living room on a couch. It's just
Mm-hmm.
taking a couple minutes to just chill out and get ready for the day. That's
Mm-hmm.
what my morning little takes. And then I pack my food up for the day. I head over to the Alano Club, and meetings
Mm-hmm.
start at 7 a.m. Um, it's Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. I hit at least 3 of those a week.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my work schedule doesn't allow me to hit all of them, but I
And
have that.
you're 9 years sober now.
Yeah, yeah. It was
What's your sobriety date again? July 5th?
July 14th of 2015.
14th. Okay.
Yep. And so most days, like on my calendar, if I don't have anything that I have to be to before 8 a.m., then I'm at a meeting Monday through Friday. And then I do a shake, I eat my breakfast, same damn thing every morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to my meeting, I get into the office, usually about 8:30 or 9 in the morning. I work with sponsees sometimes right after or right before. I do my work day. I don't get to a lot of meetings throughout the middle part of the day because I really can't count on my schedule. And
Mm-hmm.
so I get done working at the end of the day. I play a lot of golf and softball. And so I'll catch either golf or softball at the end of the day. My sober softball team we play on is actually called the Brotherhood. And
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So we play every Monday night, and it's been almost 7 years since we started that team.
Awesome.
So that's a lot of fun. And Taz is on that team with me. And we play tonight actually at 6:30 p.m.
Do
So
you?
it'll be fun. And then that's what Monday through Thursday looks like. Eat dinner, get to bed, always do a step 10, 11, and 12. That's for damn sure. Because
Okay.
I screw something up every day that I got to figure out. So
So what would you tell somebody that's out there listening that's, maybe struggling a little bit, like maybe has some time, whether they're 2 months or 2 years, and just it's, for whatever reason, it's just not, we've all been there. Like it's just like, man, if this is sobriety, screw it.
yeah,
Like what What would you tell somebody that's maybe feeling that way?
When somebody's feeling that way, I like to say, where's your connection? Where can you be connected at? And I know some of us, when you hear that, you think of connect to a higher power.
Hmm.
Others of us think connect socially, and I think they're one and the same.
I
I think
agree.
God works through all of us. Many times I've been at a gas station and seen somebody struggling, and they've come across the gas station to say hi to me, and we end up spending 15 minutes there. And I
Right.
know that that's what they needed, and I needed in that moment. That was God's will, and we just needed to walk across the damn gas station.
Yeah.
And if being connected means getting down on your knees and asking, then that's what it means. If it just means to show up to a meeting, then that's what it means. Call your sponsors.
Right.
They're super cliche, but they freaking work.
Well, I think it's what we lack too when we're using is many of us isolated toward the end and did our thing on our own and didn't really want to be around people and certainly not around loved ones, and we lack that connection. I think that's how we connect with God is through other people.
Absolutely.
And you've seen that triangle where God's at the top and you're at one side and your wife or your friend are at the other,
Whoever,
and the closer you get to God, the closer
closer
you get
you
to other
are.
people.
Yep.
And so I think that's really critical.
Yep.
So that's good.
100%.
So if you're feeling crappy right now and you don't know about it, go hit a meeting.
Yeah.
Even if you don't want to go hit a meeting, go hit a meeting. And if you did, you don't have to say anything. Just sit there, and I promise you, something's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, it
God,
will.
God's going to help you.
And when you talk about God working through others, I think the crazy part is sometimes I forget so does the adversary.
Right.
And I think that's when I think about like my program and how I do it each and every day. And it's because I chose last week who gets to be in my circle this week.
Hmm.
And I think that that's key. The further ahead I can look on who's around me, what situations I'm choosing to be in, I can take a lot of the pain out of
Hmm.
my day.
For sure. For
And
sure.
go, hey, I want to golf with H. I want to hang out with my friend Mike. I want to work in a place that's safe in an environment. I
Mhm.
want to be around people. I'm going to take phone calls from healthy people.
We smoked my son, who's on the golf team too, by the
Yeah.
way, just
Yeah.
for the record.
Yeah. How many times? I think he hit 4 balls into the 18th green or the
Oh,
ninth
boy.
green.
He's on his way to a tournament right now, actually.
Good.
So
Good.
anyway, buddy, well, hey, I really appreciate you. I could talk with you for another couple hours. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I've just kind of gotten to know you over the last year and watched you what you're doing down there, in your occupation, in your vocation, and you're just one of those guys that should be exactly where you're at. And I don't know a lot, but I know how to read people, and you're just one of those guys, man. You got that light around you, and you are that guy on the other end of the call that is that lifeline for people, and that's critical. The key out there is for people to make the call, right?
Yeah. Perfect.
And on cue, my daughter just called me from her mission.
Yay. Tell her I said hi. You had to hang up on her last time we were
That's
golfing. It
right.
didn't
We
work.
seem to be together every time she comes. But thank you for sharing your story, buddy. I sure love you,
Love you, H.
and I appreciate all you're doing. And I'll see you next month sometime.
Okay. Love you, brother. Be
Take
well.
care, man. We'll
Bye
see
bye.
you.